Scrivener. He's the executive director of the Democratic Security Institute. That's an independent think tank focused on democracy and security in Eurasia. And he's in the Georgian capital, Tbilisi. A very warm welcome to Al Jazeera. So, as we heard in the report, he's a former Manchester City player who entered politics not that long ago, and the only man the Georgian Dream Party thought could do the job. But what might a Mikhail Kavalashvili presidency look like?
Well, I think it's important to understand, firstly, that the president here is mostly ceremonial. There are still some powers held in the presidency. For example, the president can veto laws, but that veto can be overturned by parliament and have an important foreign affairs ceremonial role. But in terms of the governance of the country, the prime minister and parliament are far more important. Having said that, the election of this president, or the appointment of this president, has raised a lot of anger here in Georgia. As the report mentioned, the fact that Kavalashvili does not have any kind of higher education has been made fun of a lot by protesters. Earlier today, there was a protest where people actually brought their university diplomas to wave at Parliament as part of the protest. But what's really grating for, I think, most people in the ranks of the protesters, and I think in the majority of the country who are pro-European in orientation, is that this guy is associated with Russia. He is part of a splinter group from the ruling party, which was set up basically to be openly anti-Western, openly anti-EU, and effectively, in that case, pro-Russian. And that feels like a slap in the face in a country where the vast majority of people, polls say around 80%, favour membership of the European Union. So a Kavalashvili presidency, he might not have very much power, but I think he was basically appointed because he's a yes man. The government here knows that he will do as he is told, which the current president, Salome Zurabishvili, has not. She has a very much more independent line and is, in fact, supporting the protesters.
Can you explain how this all came to pass? I mean, why did Georgia go from voting directly for a new president to passing over responsibility to this electoral college to do so? That change adopted in 2017, I believe.
Well, there's been a long process in Georgia, sort of transitioning from what used to be a presidential system. So it used to be that the president was the most powerful person in the country, rather similar to the American system or maybe the French system. And there was a point where, from 2012 onwards, I think the power moved from the president to the office of prime minister into parliament. But for a while, they continued electing the president on a direct basis. So the last time there was an election, Salome Zurabishvili, the current president, was elected on that basis. And in 2017, they did pass amendments that this election would be the first one that would be elected by this electoral college, which includes members of parliament and representatives of local government from across Georgia. But the parliamentary aspect of this is what the opposition says makes it illegitimate, because they allege that the 26th of October election here was rigged in favour of the ruling party, and therefore this electoral college is illegitimate.
On that note, of course, the opposition refusing to recognise the election results. They believe boycotting the parliament votes, the only appropriate action on the table. Does that, in theory, mean Georgia has two presidencies, that of Kavalashvili and that of Salome Zurabishvili?
Yes, it does bring Georgia to a rather Venezuela-esque scenario. If you remember, Venezuela was a period where part of the world recognised Juan Guaido as the leader, and other parts of the world recognised Nicolas Maduro. So we could end up in that kind of situation. It depends on what other countries decide to do in terms of recognition. But we could see a situation where Salome Zurabishvili is recognised by certainly a part of the public. The opposition side of the public will recognise her as president until a new president has been elected on their terms, and maybe other countries who are allied with that part of the Georgian political spectrum might follow suit. Conceivably, we don't know yet. But at the moment, the Georgian government's line is Mikhail Kavalashvili is the new president. We won these elections. We can do whatever we want. And yes, they absolutely do believe in doing whatever they want, because over the last few weeks, we've seen them effectively ignore the opposition and meet protests with kind of pretty harsh police brutality. So it's a standoff between the two sides here at the moment. It's very hard to see which way it goes.
I wonder to what extent the Georgian Dream Party has been able to skillfully navigate long-standing fractures that have existed within the political opposition. Have those differences now been overcome in the face of a move like this?
Well, I mean, the opposition is divided. I mean, in the sense that there are four major political parties that contested the election. But I don't think that's really the main issue here. I mean, there are reasons that there are divisions in the opposition, and they all agreed before the election that if they can collectively beat the government, that they would work together in a technocratic government led actually by the current president, Salome Zurabishvili. So that's not really the issue at hand here. The issue is that all of these parties agree, the entire opposition more or less agrees that these elections were not free and fair, and that that view is backed up partially by some of the reports from international observers. For example, the OSCE found that 24% of polling stations didn't fully secure secrecy of the vote, and the Council of Europe, the leader of the Council of Europe's parliamentary delegation, called it a Big Brother election. So there is evidence to suggest that this election wasn't completely above board.
And as such, the protests will undoubtedly continue for the foreseeable. Alex Scrivener, good to hear your thoughts. Thanks for joining us.